And we are running here. Good deal. All right. Well, welcome to another Tuesday night phone call. Tonight we're going to spend a little time talking about cultural diversity and the importance of understanding how different cultural backgrounds make the workplace better, what we can learn from each other, how we can really foster an attitude of not only diversity but also inclusion. And we have with us on our phone call tonight Ms. Julia Wells, and I really enjoy bringing some of my former students, especially some of the younger ones who are just stepping out into HR and learning the ropes out there, because they can give you a lot of real good practical time, real life tips on what they've done and what they're seeing. Like you'll remember, last week we had Hutch Smith on the phone call with us. And Hutch and Julia graduated together. They both went to work at Keystone Foods, working with chickens on different production shifts. And after, I guess it was maybe about a year, I'll let her fill in the blanks there, about a year or a little bit more than that, she left the organization and went to work for, still figuring this one out, some sort of a farming system up in North Carolina where she does HR stuff for them. But Julia, welcome to the call, and we'll get you to kind of give us the quick fill in the blanks of what I've missed so they kind of know where you're coming from, and then we'll let them tell you real quick who they are and how close they are to graduation.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. Like Dr. said, my name is Julia Wells. I graduated in 2014 with a degree in HR. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is it going? Okay. So I graduated in 2014, and I took a job in production with a poultry plant called Keystone Foods in Eufaula, Alabama. And I worked there for a year and a half, and the organization wasn't for me. I came to a different poultry processing facility in North Carolina called Mount Air Farms, Inc. So it's also another poultry plant, but I'm now in HR here. So I'm an HR representative and recruiter, and I do all of the hourly hiring for the largest poultry processing facility in the world, actually. So that's my claim to fame. I did work with Hutch for about a year, and I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about HR.
Good. And as I recall, you were doing 6 and 7 day work weeks over in Eufaula.
In Eufaula, anyone ever eaten Wendy's chicken nuggets? I'm going to assume yes. So what that plant did was, it's called further processing, and it was fast. My cat is jumping in here. It was fast food products, and for whatever reason, they run 7 days a week. The machinery just isn't equipped to run what they want. So we used to work about 35 days in a row and then get about one off, and it was not for me. It was really, really not for me. And this is from someone who played a college sport, had a part-time job, and attempted to do well academically. So it was just too much for me. So I went ahead and found a different job up here, and I'm much happier.
That is a real shock to the system, coming straight out of college, being 22 years old, work 35 days in a row.
It was awful.
And as she said, even for somebody who played soccer and was always active on campus and having to practice every day and whatnot, is a really, really different situation. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you folks a chance to introduce yourselves to Julia. Amy, you go first.
Hi, I'm Amy Clark. I am majoring in HR, and hopefully at the end of May of 2017, I will have my degree. I currently work at the Marine Corps base as an HR specialist, and I'm currently in Leesburg, Georgia.
Okay, Leesburg, Georgia. Good deal. Ashley Bundrick.
Hi, I'm Ashley Bundrick. I'm graduating in 1 month with my HR degree. I'm really excited. I just left North Carolina. I'm now in Macon, Georgia, and searching for my first job. Hopefully going to get that lined up for after graduation, and that's what I'm doing right now.
All right, let's see here. I am kind of playing with a little bit of microphone control on the side. I'm hearing a little bit of background, maybe TV or somebody in another room or something like that. They come out of my microphone because it looks like I'm about to one that's all right, Connor, your turn.
Hey, my name is Connor. I'm from Hawkinsville, Georgia. I'm currently living in Americus, pursuing my HR degree that I will hopefully receive in the spring. And after that, I plan to move probably to around Thomasville and seek a job with my own company.
Okay. Good.
Hi, I'm Kenneth. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. HR major, graduate in December.
All right, and where are you working right now?
FAA,
What kind of a role?
admin role.
Okay, very good. Morgan.
Hi, I'm Morgan. I am in Worth County. I am an HR major, and I will be graduating in the summer of 2017.
All right, very good. I just got a pop-up notice saying that my internet connection's not real strong right now, and you might see me in lower quality video, and at some point it may go out. Should still have a microphone, so if I go blank, it's not by choice. It's out of internet necessity. All right, so Julie, the way this typically works is that we have an assigned topic for the week, and either one or two students do a little bit of research in SHRM the week before, provide us with a list of reference articles from SHRM, create some talking points to help us understand the background of the topic, and then a discussion question that we talk about sporadically during the week. We do these phone calls on Tuesday, and the trend has been that a lot of folks kind of hold off on their comments on the discussion board until we've had this conversation to kind of give them a better framework of what the whole topic is all about, and then we start seeing some activity on the discussion board Wednesday and Thursday. So this week, let me go back and double check my notes here. I think Amy and Lauren are hitting up the topic. Lauren has given us advance notice that she has been helping work the election polls today, and they just closed about an hour ago, assuming that everybody who was in line had a chance to vote. So she may be having to stay a little bit late, letting the last few voters go through, and she'll join us as soon as she can. But we will give the microphone to Amy and let her give us the overview of what she has picked up on related to cultural diversity, and then we'll get our conversation started.
Okay, pretty much cultural diversity, what I gathered is that the workforce can benefit from diversity in many ways, because not all of us are going to think alike in ideas, creativity, likes, dislikes, and having a diverse workforce, we can come together and have different analytical skills, have different ideas, have different ways of doing things, and we become stronger. We also have different marketing ideas. We have different ways of filtering communication down. I mean, there's just all kinds of different ways that we benefit from having a diverse workforce, because, again, the people that sometimes we are servicing are also diverse. So having the broad spectrum is important so that we can meet the people that we're also servicing. The overall diversity is just a huge benefit for an organization, and a lot of companies have diversity goals that they try to set out, whether it be that they're trying to meet a quota for recruiting, or that they just try to strive, make sure that they are having a diverse workforce by looking at their overall percentages throughout the year. But that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Okay. A little while ago, Julia, I muted your mic from my side, so you'll need to reopen that when you get ready to talk, and you're welcome just to kind of jump in when you feel like it with observations from your place of business and North Carolina, maybe in general. But let's start the conversation off with the question: what are some of the advantages of diversity? Anybody? And we'll ask the students to click on the raise hand button when they want to say something, so we'll make sure that we don't have too many mics open at the same time and get feedback. What are some of the advantages of diversity? Now, Amy touched on some of them. Julia.
Can I talk?
Sure you can.
Okay. I work in a really, really diverse workforce. We have people from the Philippines, Burma, Haitian, Creole employees from Haiti, everywhere from Mexico, Honduras, Nicaragua, and also people from the States. So you have a lot of people from different backgrounds that all are used to handling their jobs and employee issues in different ways. And so the first thing that comes to mind with all that is a language barrier. And so there's a lot of benefits to diversity, but there are some things that do complicate it. But as everything that I have seen in a fairly unskilled environment, what we mostly do is debone and pack chicken. So it's fairly unskilled labor. There's not a lot of education that's required for it. The more people you have from different backgrounds, the more successful you are, because sometimes you get so tunnel vision in the way that you've done things for your entire life that it's hard to see or imagine a different way to do it. And you meet somebody who's from a different side of the world with a different, that speaks a different language and has been raised a completely different way, and you can bounce ideas off each other. And most of the time you really end up finding another way. 2 plus 2 is 4, but so is 1 plus 3. Just because it's what you're used to doesn't mean it's always right. And I've found that with our diversity, we really are able to change our processes and cut cost savings and just really find better ways to do things that we've done for 7 years. And all of a sudden we think, why didn't we think of this before?
All right, question for you, Julia. When you think about the overall HR function there, your business, where are you in the picture of things? You the only female? You the youngest person? What?
My department is three employees and then our boss. And I am the second youngest. A girl below me is a 20-year-old Hispanic female. And then you have me, a 24-year-old white female. And then we have a 35-year-old black female. And then our boss is a 36-year-old Hispanic male. So even within our own department, we have a whole lot of diversity. Obviously, no two people from the same race. And so we that doesn't mean we don't bump heads or anything, but we do come up with a lot of solutions for the many problems that we face.
Okay. What's education like on the other 3 employees?
The Hispanic female just has a high school diploma. The black female has a bachelor's degree and is working on her master's. And then our boss has a bachelor's degree, but not in HR, in I think history with like a teaching certificate. So it's really not related to HR, but he does have a bachelor's degree.
Okay. So you have a blending of gender, you got a blending of race, you got a blending of economic background, of national background, of educational background. So even though you only have 4, you've got a pretty good touch of what diversity is all about and what it can bring.
Oh yeah, we're well represented.
Okay. You just need a white boy, don't you? 40-year-old white boy.
Yeah, we just need Bill Hutch to come on up.
You just need all that to come up. Yeah, you can't talk him into it, huh?
Uh-huh.
Now, you heard that he just took a job somewhere in Georgia.
A job with Shaw, where Ben works. Ben Moody.
Oh, okay. I was thinking he was still with Keystone.
He is. He took an HR job with them in Camilla, and then has recently. I think that was supposed to be a secret, so don't tell anybody.
Oh, no.
He,
Nobody knows.
yeah, he recently, I think, accepted a position with Shaw, but it's also
Okay.
in Georgia, in Dalton, Georgia.
All right. So, current issues, folks. What are some thoughts that come to mind besides what Julie has shared where diversity can create problems? Why would it make sense to have a whole bunch of white guys and just not worry about anything else? Amy.
Well, I think she makes a good point about how the diverse workforce can create a problem, but I think that's also why, on the other hand, you have to have a diverse HR staff or a diverse workforce, is so that you can have people that can service, those employees that you have amongst the company. So maybe, at different levels, diversity needs to be more important.
Okay. Who else? How can diversity create problems in the workplace? Ashley.
I can just talk a little bit about my experience on that. When we lived overseas, and there, I was actually the first American that a lot of people had worked with, and some people were not okay with that at first, and so some people was an issue, but then over time, I guess I made a good impression. And people tell me, like, it changed my impression of American people, and I don't know. And over time, it actually became a really positive thing.
All right, your video and audio feeds freezing up a little bit from time to time. I think we got the bulk of that. Who else has got some ideas? We tend to talk about diversity being a good thing, but we need to recognize that it does create its challenges. How about it, Morgan? What would you think could be one of the challenges of diversity? We'll come to you in just a second. Kenneth just raised his hand. Let's get him first. Morgan's off the hook for a minute. Or 3 minutes.
Difficulties with diversity is it's kind of like if you have, like you were saying, an office that's just full of, well, I mean, I guess that's kind of my perspective. If you got an office that's just full of older white males, and when I got hired, I was in my mid to late 20s, black male, completely different perspective, completely different way of approaching scenarios and situations. So the difficulty in that is them understanding that I didn't think the same, or I didn't process things the same way. So it's a not necessarily a learning curve, but it's getting accustomed to each other, getting comfortable with each other, figuring out, the just how things are done differently on both sides of the street. Now everything is peachy keen.
All right. Amy Clark.
I think too, another thing is companies can be so focused on diversity goals that sometimes they overlook some perfectly qualified people just to satisfy the goals.
That's a good point. It can be very easy, as you say, to get so focused on the fact that we've got to have more females that we maybe hire females who aren't the best fits for this job or the best fits for this company, or we've got to have so many Hispanics, or we've got to, oh my goodness, now we're starting to get so many of these folks that we've got to have a few more 40-year-old white guys. And we can start hiring people that aren't wise hiring decisions. Something else that comes to mind is that diversity is intended to give us different perspectives in terms of ideas and viewpoints on life and whatnot, but that really only provides a benefit to us if we are willing to listen to them. If I get so focused on what I believe and I think that that is right, to the point that I don't even hear what you have to say, or I immediately start arguing with you about how you're wrong, that diversity doesn't do us any good. I don't want to turn this into an election night thing, but we see that, don't we, in our country? We get so divided, and we usually, when we think about diversity, we think about the race, or we think about the gender, or we think about the ethnic background, or whatever. But diversity can be so broad in terms of our political philosophies, or our religious beliefs, or those kinds of things, that we can get so entrenched in the way that we see things that even when we are surrounded by folks who think differently, we don't interact with them, or when we do, it's combative in nature. We just had Lauren join the call from her polling areas. Lauren, let me get you to open up your video and your audio and let you introduce yourself to Julia, where you're from, how close you are to graduation, and all that kind of stuff.
Work. Is my mic working?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Lauren, and I am graduating in December, and I'm an HR major, and I'm sorry I look exhausted because I've been working the election polls all day. It's been crazy, so, but I'm glad I can join in on the call finally.
All right, and as a quick way of introduction for Lauren, we have with us Julia Wells, who is a 2014 graduate of GSW, played soccer while she was here, went to work with a poultry processing plant, worked with Hutch Smith from last week, and now she's up in North Carolina, one of 4 people running one of the largest poultry processing plants in the world, I think she said, if not the largest. So she has greatly increased her responsibilities. And we are talking about diversity. Lauren, let's give you an opportunity to share a couple of things that you learned. We were particularly the last few minutes kind of talking about advantages and disadvantages, challenges, benefits of diversity. Julia, real quick, and then we'll go back to Lauren.
That was my cat.
That was your cat. Well, so what does your cat want to say?
I'm sorry. I'm on my computer.
Your cat managed to hit the raise hand button. That is a talented, intelligent cat.
It's a touchscreen computer.
Oh, okay. All right.
Sorry.
Well, Lauren, let's go back to you. What did you learn in the process of researching this last week?
Okay, so I'm not really sure what's been said so far, but I really learned like that diversity is really like key for the workplace because I believe it brings in a lot of different creative ideas, and I mean, it's better to have a lot of ideas than just kind of the same broad ass. I'm sorry if my words get blurred tonight because it's been a long day, but just if you have diversity, you're gonna have okay, my mic just went, or camera just
You're
went
good.
off.
You're good.
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay. So
All right. Audio and video just both went out. All right. Well, anyway, as Lauren tries to get that worked out there, if diversity is supposed to be such a good thing, why do we have to talk about it so much? Why doesn't it just come natural? Why does the government have to create rules? Amy Clark.
Because we tend to gravitate to what's familiar to us. And sometimes what's familiar to us are things that are, like us. That, our personalities or the things that we agree with. So I think that it's just natural about it. So we have to talk about it so that it comes to the forefront of our mind.
All right. Would you all tend to agree with that? Julia, thank you. You're starting to see that sometimes these calls drag a little bit. Just like class lectures. Remember those boring class lectures?
The ones I was there, I do.
The ones you were there, yeah.
I did oversleep sometimes.
And you
No,
left
but
town to play soccer sometimes.
Yep. I have definitely noticed that a lot of people are more comfortable with what is familiar and with what they know. And the thing you know the best in the world is yourself. You've known yourself longer than anybody else, and the way you were raised and what you believe and what you feel. And it's sometimes it's scary to get away from that. And sometimes people just need a little bit of an extra push. And I think that's why the government, gets involved and makes things like affirmative action and diversity quotas. And it's very easy to assume ideas are the best and correct because it's hard for a lot of people to admit that they might not be the smartest or they might not have the best idea. But that's where the diversity comes into play is if you can if you can take a good idea and add something from another person and add another thing and make it a great idea you wouldn't have otherwise been able to do without diversity, then your benefits have completely outweighed your disadvantages already.
Okay. So who tends to throw up the blocks when it comes to trying to diversify in an organization? Is it hiring managers? Is it senior administration? HR folks? Amy?
I think it's a balance between HR and equal opportunity specialists if you have one in your organization.
All right, I missed a little bit of that. You said balance between HR and what?
An equal opportunity specialist, like some organizations have an EEO advisor that focuses on diversity groups of each month.
Okay. I'm starting to chuckle here a little bit because as a moderator, I've got several different videos on my screen at the same time. And while you're talking, I'm watching Julia's cat trying to play with the keyboard. I just start laughing and you go, what in the world is he laughing at? It's probably Julia's cat. Y'all can't see it, but it is very entertaining. All right. Well, Julia has added to the conversation here that one of the reasons why we tend to be encouraged to diversify more is because we are a whole lot more comfortable with people who are like us. And that's why if I walk into a room of people I don't know, I'm probably going to go straight to the 50-year-old guys because they have they would appear to have a whole lot more in common with me. And it doesn't always occur to me that somebody who looks different may have really good ideas. And so sometimes you have to force me to listen to other people to get those good ideas. And we've said that one of the benefits of that is that we begin to realize that we don't know everything. And we like to think that we're pretty solid and we can come up with most of the what ifs. But we begin to learn very quickly when we get into these environments, especially in the working world where we're trying to brainstorm, problem solve, that we can quickly come up with 4 or 5 different solutions to a problem. And then when we bring in somebody who's a little different, we bring in the female, or we bring in the Hispanic, or we bring in the 70-year-old or the recent college graduate, they say, well, what about this? And we go, as I think it was Julie was saying, we go, I hadn't thought about that. That's kind of interesting. That's got some promise. So diversity creates a lot of positives for us. And it is a little bit odd that doesn't come instinctively to us. When you think about the times that you are in a classroom and your professor says, all right, I want you all to start working on this project, and you're to form groups to work on this project, what's your first instinct as you look around the room? Morgan, I see that hand.
I'm a friend. Someone
I'm
that I
your
talk
friend.
to all the time.
All right. Why is it probably that you talk to them all the time and they're your friends? Because they're a lot like you, right? Okay, Lauren.
I was gonna say too, like a lot of the times, like I know when my professors say pick your group and stuff, and like I kind of know how other people's work ethics are, and like if they're similar to mine or like better than mine, I want to work with them. But and then like you said, like they're similar to what you do, so that's what I would look for.
Okay. I think it's natural in a situation like that. We try to immediately identify people that are going to have common goals, that are going to try to work towards the same kind of outcomes and put the same effort into it. And we know that because we've got to know them. But at some point in time, we didn't know them, did we? At some point in time, they were strangers. So how do we begin to recognize the value of difference? How do we begin to recognize the value of a different race or a different gender or a different religious background or a different political philosophy? Kenneth?
Well, you put them that, I mean, I don't want to say you put them against their will, but you.
All right, try to get Kenneth. Dropped off the call. We'll come back. Kenneth will come back to you. All right. Who else would try to finish his thought? Did you hear enough of it to kind of know where he was going, Julia?
I think to really value something, you have to understand it first.
Okay.
So I think someone from a different background or religion, that your first step in learning to value it and what it brings to the table is to understand what that person believes, they've been raised, and why it's so important to them. I think before you can really value anything, you have to understand it or accept it.
All right. And how do we begin to do that? How do we begin to understand their viewpoint, their perspectives? Amy?
I think by putting people in groups together and having them work on projects so that they can start to learn more about each other and learn the value that they have to bring to the group.
Okay. So if we have...
That'll prompt them to start asking, different questions and maybe get to know each other better.
Okay. So if we're in a position of authority, we kind of force people together in combinations that we think are going to create some value. If we are in charge of doing it ourselves and we're just kind of looking around the room, unfortunately, this may not be the right answer, but one of the ways I think that we begin to explore those differences is by making some stereotypes. And we look around the room and we say, okay, you appear to have this characteristic, so I'm going to make this assumption about you. You have that characteristic, so I'm going to make this assumption about you. And that may be right or wrong. But we start somewhere. We start with initial impressions and perceptions. And generally, we kind of explore those impressions or perceptions to see if they're accurate. And we either confirm those initial stereotypes or perceptions, or we say, you know what, that wasn't right. And so we begin to learn about each other. Again, back to those common dividing lines or fault lines, we would call them. We would probably typically make certain assumptions about females that are different from the assumptions we would make about males. We would make certain assumptions about Hispanics that are different than Europeans or African Americans. We would make certain assumptions about Baptists that are different than Catholics, or assumptions about conservatives that are different from moderates or liberals. But we start with an assumption, don't we? And we start with those surface level observable things: color of skin, color of eyes, length of hair, type of clothing, those kinds of things. And that's not necessarily bad. Stereotypes can sometimes be a positive thing if they cause us to explore and to understand and appreciate. And that's kind of what diversity is all about. And I don't remember whether it's part of this class or part of another one that I'm teaching. It's also talking about diversity right now. But diversity, while it's a good thing, is not the end goal, because we can have lots of diversity and be extremely dysfunctional. The end goal is inclusion. What does inclusion mean, and how is that different necessarily than diversity? Julia's being patient. She's trying to see if somebody will raise their hand, but she knows the answer. Julia.
To have a diverse workforce really just means that you have people from different ethnic groups, genders, age, cohorts represented. That you hire people. To really have an inclusive workplace is where those people feel valued, those people feel comfortable contributing to the bottom line, and that they're able to work together towards a common goal. So to really be inclusive is to have functional diversity. It's not just having a whole bunch of people who look different and think different. It's having a bunch of people that can actually get their work done and respect each other at the same time, respect their differences, and use their differences to accomplish their organizational goals.
That sounds like a college graduate right there. So it's all about the letter of the law or the spirit of the law, isn't it? If we are told that we need to be diverse, the letter of the law says, okay, doggone it, we got to go hire a bunch of females. We got to go hire a bunch of Hispanics. And once we've hired you, we say, all right, you're part of the team, go do your thing. But that's not the spirit of the law, is it? What they're trying to get us to do is not just fill up a certain number of seats in certain categories, but to begin to look at things differently, look at things from bigger perspectives, more global perspectives. And that's what the inclusion is. It's not just having somebody who looks different part of the team, but asking them what they think and including them on the problem solving and the strategic planning. It is getting their ideas when we're trying to create marketing plans, or we're looking at customer bases or product development, when we're developing policies and objectives. So which do you think is easier, becoming diverse or becoming inclusive? This is an easy question, isn't it, Julia?
That's what I was thinking.
Everybody's being a little hesitant. Connor, what do you think? Which is easier, diverse or inclusive?
I think it's definitely easier to be inclusive rather than diverse, because if you have a bunch of people that are like-minded, they're going to use the same methods to solve each problem, as opposed to if you're diverse, there might be 3 or 4 different ways you could go about it, and you might not be as open to things as you would if there were people more like you that you've been around, that you know, and could be effective.
All right. Who else? Would everybody agree? Would anybody disagree? Amy Clark.
I'll say the opposite. I would say that it's easier to have a diverse workforce because you can go out and hire anybody to fill your diversity goals, but it's hard to have an inclusive workforce to make people all come together and unite and work as a good functioning organization.
Okay. All right. What do you think, Julia?
Yeah, I can talk.
I'm sorry.
Do I have to raise my hand? Sorry.
No, you don't have to.
Oh, sorry. I think that if you put diversity and inclusion side by side, diversity is surface level. It's the shallow, the appearance, the gender, like you were saying earlier, what you can, and it's easy to say I have and I want to hire a Hispanic female and a black male and white male, and it's easy to do that, and then to just throw them on out to the wolves and say, hey, I've got a diverse workforce. Look, I'm a great person, but to really be inclusive and make those people feel valued and to take the time to learn why they think the way they do and how it can help your organization. That takes time and trust and development with a lot of different people, because right at first, like you were saying, you might bump heads. You might be resistant to someone that thinks differently from you, or you might get defensive if someone views their ideas as better than yours. And to overcome that and really be inclusive, to me, is a lot harder than surface diversity, because you can hire the wrong person for the job 9 times out of 10, because a lot of companies do.
All right. I'd say a lot of the answer to the question about which one's easier depends on your intent. Because I think it's very possible for you to be very open to the idea of including everybody who's part of the team, but you don't want to do diversity just because you have to. You want to get the right diversity. And if you spend a lot of time looking for the right diversity, that can actually be harder than being inclusive. Because once they're in, you're all on hearing their ideas and putting them in charge of things that require authority and decision making and whatnot. But generally speaking, inclusion is harder, because sometimes the diversity is not because we want to, but it's kind of digging our heels in, kicking and screaming. We don't want to have to do this, but doggone it, it's like when mom tells you to clean your room. If I have to, I will. It's like the little boy that's riding in the backseat of the car, and mama tells him to sit down 4 times, and finally turns around and says, buddy, if you don't sit down right now, I'm going to stop this car and you're not going to be happy about it. And he sits down and she says, thank you. And he says, well, mama, you just need to know I'm sitting down on the outside, but I'm standing up on the inside. And sometimes that's our approach to diversity. We'll do it if we have to. And I don't see the value of hiring this Hispanic female when this college-educated Caucasian male is waiting for a job and is so much better. But by golly, if you tell me I have to, I'll do it. And then a year from now, I'll tell you how you just messed everything up because you made me hire this person that's not the right one. So diversity can be very easy to do because we do it because we have to. But we have to. It's hard. It's hard for anybody. Let me say it's harder. It's harder for anybody to force us to be inclusive. But they can force us to be diverse. Depends on motive. All right, I'm getting about 50 or so. Amy and Lauren, I'm going to put it back on you for a moment here as you look back over your notes that you prepared for us. If you look at the discussion questions that you've asked us to consider for the week, are there aspects of diversity that you were kind of driving towards in all of that we haven't really talked about, that extending the conversation for a few more minutes might be of benefit to folks who want to participate in the discussion later on this week? And I'm really good at taking 2 minutes to ask a simple question. Amy.
I would just maybe touch on how HR plays in driving the benefits of diversity in the workforce. You know, what is our main role in the communication of it?
Okay, great question. This is about current issues in HR, so the focus needs to be on what?
HR.
HR. What's HR's role in diversity? I think the obvious answer is that HR is the one who has to fill out all the forms. HR has to count all the heads and all the noses and put the numbers in the columns to prove that we're doing what we're supposed to do. But is HR's role more than that? Julie's shaking her head yes.
I think it's important that we stay up to date on all the updated regulations and policies and laws so that we can filter those down to management.
Okay. And hopefully in the process of communicating all those policies and laws and things, folks around the organization begin to see us with a little bit more appreciation. Kind of like those other crazy little laws that are out there. Man, that's a lot to think about. Who typically is going to get the responsibility of changing the mindset of the organization if we don't do well at diversity? Who gets the job of teaching people why this is important, why this is valuable?
HR.
HR. So it helps if HR kind of buys into this concept to begin with and understands it and recognizes the benefits of it, understands the challenges of it. Because if you've got a manager over there, over that department, that just really seems to be pushing back on this idea of why we need to have different ideas, different perspectives, it's probably going to be HR that has to work with them on why this is a good idea. Okay? And what can happen if we refuse to do it.
It won't ever happen. The diversity, the managers, the people who don't understand it fully, they won't ever get it and they won't ever buy into it.
Okay. What do you think that does to us long term as an organization?
Not
Detrimental, because like Julia said, if you don't really have somebody pushing it and pushing the importance of it, it's, you know, if I don't have somebody to explain to me that eating my vegetables are good for me, I'm just gonna eat meat, and eventually I'll get sick, and then, oh, you know what, now I'm a champion for vegetables. So you gotta have HR to push vegetables on everybody so they slowly change. Maybe not as quick as HR makes the change, but at least it starts to get ingrained into everybody's minds.
All right, now Julie, is it a bad thing if everybody eats nothing but chicken nuggets?
not for me.
Not for you, it's not. Ain't
Not
off
to
those
have
school
not paid my bills.
All right. All right. Well, we've looked at diversity from the obvious things, the race and the national origin and gender and things like that. But one source of diversity that we really haven't maybe thought about on this phone call that is really hot topic stuff right now is age. Julie, how does age diversity play an issue in our organizations today?
Well, obviously you've got the millennials who are coming into the workforce, and then ahead of them you've got Gen X and most of your managerial roles. So you have two different schools of thought. Dr. Grimes always used to tell us that his father worked with, I think it was Coke, for a large number of years and missed maybe one day of work. And the philosophy of that generation was you live to work. And millennials have reversed that of you work so you can live. And because you want different things, because you have different outcomes with you have different desired outcomes, a lot of people are struggling to find a way to work under a manager who thinks so differently. And then a lot of the managers are struggling to find a way to manage this employee who thinks so differently because younger people know everything. Of course we do. We know everything. So it's hard for some people to listen. And the older people who really have been through more in life and can draw on more experience to make a better decision, you know, they have the ideas there and they have the solution, but they can't communicate it in a way that this younger person wants to hear it. And so a lot of age just creates the whole, well, he's just a grumpy old man and they're just a spoiled little brat. And there's a big wall that, you know, between with the generational gap. And generally speaking, an older person is more set in their ways. And you hope that younger people, especially, you know, college educated, are willing to change and look at the big picture. But that's not always the case. And so age is a huge deal because by default, most of the time your manager will be older than you. But then you even have the case where what if they're younger and you have an issue taking authority from someone who's younger than you. So age is like a 360 issue in every industry, in every workplace. Age comes into play every single day. I can promise you that.
Yeah, I want to highlight a couple of the things that you pointed out there in regards to wisdom. Older people have wisdom because they've experienced it, and they can point back to that time when it happened. Younger people have wisdom because it's common sense. I don't have to have experienced it because this is a no-brainer, and we can butt heads on that, can't we? One of the biggest challenges of the older generation that's about to retire is who's coming along behind me. You got all these people who've only been here for 4 or 5 years that don't have all the experience. They haven't been asking questions. They don't know how we do it. They've got lots of energy. They got lots of creativity. They're good with technology, but none of them have put in their dues, and none of them know the process. And then you've got these younger folks that say, man, if you old people would just get out of the way, we could really get this company moving because we can't always do it the way that you've done it for 30 years. And we've had a lot of discussions over the weeks about how the workplace is changing. And it is becoming more tailored, not so much to the millennials, but even to the ones younger than that. You know, the millennials are starting to get into the workforce, but even the younger ones on the tail end of that are having an influence on the workplace. And so it can be very easy, just like with gender and race and all those kinds of things, to not have the proper diversity in terms of ages. Can you imagine what that senior management meeting is like the very first time when you've got a 30-year-old sitting in the room? You've got a bunch of 55 and 60-year-olds that have been meeting together every Tuesday for the last 15 years, and suddenly you've got a 25-year-old sitting in the room. And you say, all right, well, here's the problem of the week. What are we going to do about it? And the 25-year-old goes, why don't we do this? And everybody turns and looks at him like, where did you come from? I mean, that's a diversity issue, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. What final thoughts do you have before I let you go check the election results? What election?
Oh,
I
Let me get Kenneth first real quick.
I said, oh no, that was today. It was a joke. Da, 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 da.
Oh, no, that was today. All right, yeah. All right, Julia.
I definitely think that when you think about diversity and when you do research on diversity, you get the pretty picture of it and all the benefits that come. And I'm a proponent for diversity. All day long, I think that companies should be diverse and be inclusive and that you benefit from diversity. But like we touched on a little bit earlier, I think it's easy to forget about some of the hard spots. Some of the most notable being language barriers as well as age barriers and different schools of thought. And if you've got five diverse people who have different ideas, you know, how do you decide on which one is the best? And that's why it's so important to be inclusive instead of just diverse. Instead of doing diversity for the sake of diversity and kicking and screaming the whole way, to actually buy into it. And like Dr. Grimes was saying, it's HR has to be the champion. HR has to be the driving force to say, look, this is going to help you, and here's why. And if you can get them to buy into it and have an inclusive work environment, you'll definitely have an advantage over any competitors in the industry that you're in.
All right, very good. Nice words of wisdom. I'll wrap up the topic. We will shut down recording. Hopefully y'all forgot it was even going. We'll make this available probably in the next day or so for folks to watch if they missed the call tonight. Just as a frame of reference, Julia, we do have 9 on the roster in the class, and on any given week, we've got about half that are able to make the phone calls. So hopefully the other 4 will watch the video and get some ideas from it. But Julia, I appreciate your time tonight. Good to see your face. Good to see that you're doing well. And we really appreciate you giving up an hour of your evening. To let you to know real quick, Julia had to get out of this crazy phone call. Upper left-hand corner, the 3 horizontal lines. Click that. Down at the bottom is a icon for leave session. And it'll ask you to rate the session with smiley faces. Click submit, and you're gone. But again, thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. And our folks will kind of leave the session at their own pace as well.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.